Hi everybody, welcome to another makeover of another trash dresser. Well, it wasn't completely trash, just the top. The legs and 2 out of 6 handles were missing. I don't know if you had a chance to notice that, but here we go. 2 handles are missing on the left side. And I would recommend you to grab a popcorn because you're about to see my nightmare makeover part 2. If you missed part 1, here's the link for it and it will be in the description box below so you can watch it anytime you want. It started as normal makeover with removing the top coat, and because there was not much of it left on the top, I used my carbide scraper to scrape it off. To the sides, I applied my favorite chemical stripper Circa 1850. Can't say that the finish was easiest to remove, I had to go over it a couple of times. For the drawers, I switched back to my scraper because it seemed easier, and it was. First, I scraped the drawer fronts with the missing handles and everything looked great. And then I took the handle off and I started suspecting that I was gonna have some troubles with those drawers.
Uh-oh.
The veneer faded over the years, and under those pulls, the color was a bit darker. I didn't like the original pulls. I had no desire at all to build those missing two. I was gonna use something else on this dresser, and I was hoping that this little discoloration won't be a big pain in my butt, but I was wrong. On the 3 top drawers, I decided to soften the top coat first because it was kinda inconvenient to scrape. I covered them with the blue shop towels and poured over some methyl hydrate and left for about 5 minutes-ish. I sanded all drawers with 180 grit sandpaper and then I wiped the dust using some mineral spirit. And as you can see, the discoloration was still there. It didn't look great, so I would have to deal with that later. There was a little chip on one of the drawer fronts. I filled it in with some wood filler and then I grabbed 120 grit sandpaper and moved on to sanding the body of the dresser. After 2 rounds of sanding, I still had some scratches left on the top and on the drawer fronts. As usual, I try to steam them out using a hot iron and a damp cloth. Once all scratches were steamed out, I only had some energy left to sand the drawers, and that was it. So I sanded the drawers and I called it a day and decided to come back in the morning. Oh, hi, what are you doing?
Sanding.
Great, let me help you. Okay, it wasn't my best acting, but I hope you liked it. Next morning, I came back and I sanded the body of the dresser with 180 grit sandpaper. And you're probably wondering, why is this a nightmare? I don't know about yours, but my nightmares usually start like just a regular dream and then kaboo, nightmare. So at that moment, while I was sanding, I could slightly feel the symptoms of impending nightmare. Some crazy thoughts were racing through my mind, and it was so hard to resist them, but I did pretty good at first. If you remember, I had some discolorations on the jar fronts, and I was thinking so hard about how to fix it. I had tried oxalic acid, you saw me doing it on the top, and I did the same with the jar fronts. I just didn't film it, and it didn't help anyway. Before choosing any of the ideas, I decided to clean inside of the jars. Not all of them, they were pretty clean except for two. One of them had nail polish stuck, and I used nail polish remover, and this way I accidentally discovered the best product for cleaning inside of the jars. Maybe it works with the outside as well, never tried. But inside, oh my god, it cleaned up not just the nail polish, it got rid of pencil marks, some inks, and even I don't know what kind of cookies were stuck to the bottom of the drawers. It dealt with all that stuff. Meanwhile, it was time to decide what to do with the drawer fronts, and kaboo! I decided to go with water-based stain. And not just one stain, but two of them. First, it was some American walnut, and then I thought it wasn't enough. The discoloration was still visible, and I applied the second stain. It's a different stain, it's color walnut, but it's really dark. And this particular jar looked pretty good. So I decided to go on to the next one, and for some reason I took the one that didn't have discoloration. Very smart, Alona, very smart. Then I took the third jar and I applied the same stain, and I realized that it was looking pretty bad. Thankfully, it was a water-based stain and it dried pretty fast. Like in 20 minutes, I was able to sand it and do something crazy. I mean, if you think about it, it wasn't crazy at all. I decided to apply a paint wash. Yes, paint wash. Wood doesn't absorb the paint and it stays on top. And if I apply a stain over this paint wash, it will help me to camouflage that discoloration I had. The paint I used for the paint wash was kind of like beige and gray-ish, and I added a little bit of green color to neutralize that orange undertone of walnut. Before applying the paint wash to the rest of the dresser, I had two more drawers to sand. And spoiler alert, this is not the last sanding in this makeover. Once the paint was dried, the wood grain looked a little bit smoothed out, and I wanted it to be more pronounced. So I took the brass wire brush and I brushed the surface to enhance that wood grain. Then I applied water-based wood stain, the same in the color American Walnut, and I didn't like the result. So I applied 2 coats of oil-based stain in the color Dark Walnut over it. And for the other jars and for the body of the dresser, I didn't use water-based stain at all, and the result was pretty much the same. And then on top of it, I applied Restore Finish in the color Walnut. Yes, I did apply Restore Finish. I like using this product as a wood stain, and in this case, it helped me to even out the color. I can't tell that I was crazy about the result, but I thought that once I apply the top coat, it will enhance the wood grain and it will be a little bit darker. So I continued. And once I was done, my dresser looked like this. And oh my gosh, I hated it. It just looks like one of those cheap ass dressers with the laminate and printed faux wood grain. I just couldn't look at it. I couldn't believe that I did it. I took the dresser with beautiful walnut veneer and I made it looking like one of those outdated laminate dressers. And yes, I applied the top coat to one of the drawers. It didn't change a thing. I was really close to a nervous breakdown, so I called it a day, and next morning I went back to my garage and I started sanding again. But this time my sander didn't want to help me and I had to do it all by myself. If you ever stripped white paint off the furniture, especially of walnut veneer, you can feel my pain. Whitewash is not a white paint, but still the tiny pieces of paint got stuck in the wood grain. I decided to try restore a finish because it has some solvents in there. It usually helps to get rid of some paint, and on the drawers it did pretty good. And then I went to the garage and did the same thing with the top and the sides of the dresser, and in this light it looked pretty good. Then I made a dark paint wash. I tried this trick before when I had some white paint stuck in the wood grain, but I used black paint wash. Here I'm using the mixture of the paint, some water, and some water-based wood stain. And like I said, the drawers were looking pretty good without even this paint wash, but with it they were looking even better. While I was applying the paint wash, I found one spot with a broken board I needed to fix. I just squeezed some wood glue in there using the paintbrush, and then I clamped it and I left it to dry. I applied 2 coats of the same paint wash to the top and the sides of the dresser, and with the sides it worked just perfect. I was able to get rid of any white spots I had. The top looked not too bad. There were still some white spots here and there, but I decided to try something else and I was hoping that it'll help me to get rid of them. It wouldn't be a real nightmare if I didn't sand through the veneer. To fix this, I use gouache paint. I like using this paint, especially if I use the oil as a top coat. Gouache dries flat and it doesn't have as much sheen as acrylic paint has. I have a furniture refinishing kit with that resin paint, but sometimes it turns out glossy. So since I tried gouache, I don't use that kit often. Just keep in mind that gouache is a water-based paint, and if you apply a water-based top coat over it, you can kind of wipe it off. So before applying water-based top coat, I would recommend to seal this paint with some shellac. As a top coat, I'm using artist oil, and I decided to add some wood stain, oil-based wood stain to it. Don't worry, first I made a small batch and I made sure that it works. The oil and the stain, they kind of mix together. So I made the bigger batch and I applied it to the dresser. I left artist oil to penetrate for about 1.5 hours and I came back and I buffed it off. And if you think that it helped, you are so wrong. It didn't help, it even made it worse. From this angle, the surface doesn't look bad, but look at this. When I buffed the top, I think a little bit of my paint wash was buffed off as well. And the funny thing is, it only happened to the top. The drawers and the sides of the dresser, they were totally fine. I obviously needed to do something. I mean, I had to do something. And that is exactly what I was trying to avoid. Cleaning the top with the wire brush. I took my brass wire brush, I took some stripper, and little by little I scraped the whole top. And somewhere in the middle of this process, the battery of the camera died, so you won't see all my suffering. I was done stripping and it looked good, by the way, no white spots there. And I realized that I was out of my stain slash paint wash.
Uh-oh.
I mean, I wasn't completely out, I had some, but it wasn't enough to apply 2 coats of it to the top. At that point, I was already in kinda I don't really care mood, so I applied whatever I had, and I had oil-based dark walnut wood stain. And thankfully, it worked. The top turned out the same color as the drawer fronts. While the top was drying, I needed to fix a couple of broken wooden sliders and build one missing rail. As a top coat, I applied the same tinted artist oil, and 1 hour later, I came back and I buffed it off. And it looked great. This time, it actually looked great. The back panel of the dresser was in pretty good shape, but it had that watermark. Just for the aesthetic sakes, I decided to paint it black. I also sanded the other side, but I left that spot in the middle. There is a manufacturer's stamp, and that's the only stamp this dresser has, so I decided to keep it. One more stumble with this piece were the legs. I ordered them from Amazon and there was no information about the size, I mean not the length, but the diameter, and they actually a little bit on the thicker side. I could have ordered different one, but I just wanted to be done and get over this dresser, so I left them, and they actually don't look too bad. You'll see it at the end. The last step is to attach the hardware, and what could possibly go wrong here? I bought this hardware about 2 years ago, maybe even more. I bought them secondhand, but the knobs were in pretty good shape and they were so beautiful and shiny. But once I unpacked them, it turned out that they had some scratches. I don't know how it happened. I didn't really touch that bag, but it happened. Thankfully, I had lots of them and I picked the best one and I attached them to the dresser. And we are done here. Let me remind you how this dresser looked before. And here's how it looks now. Not exactly what I was planning, but I definitely managed to get rid of the discoloration. Hopefully you guys will learn from my mistakes. Thank you so much for watching and see you in my next video.